obviously do not go outside when it's raining, so thank you for being here. My name is Melissa Orlando, and I am both your friend and your neighbor, and with your help, I will be the next assembly person for District 37.
My name is Sei Yang. I know Melissa for a little over 2 years now, and late February, Melissa told me that she's gonna run for New York State Assembly, District 37. I'm like, why not? I'm here to support.
Ty, in particular, the reason I got involved in the community at the very beginning, not that I didn't want to, but my first foray was with Ty Sullivan doing a fundraiser for Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
And he pulled me in, and that's where the ball started rolling. And I met all sorts of other community people through that. We've done many fundraisers, many projects over the years together. With Pat and Manny, I've worked on the Chamber of Commerce, worked on Access Queens. We've done so many things, Sunnyside Artists, right? So these folks who are saying nice things about me, they're also the real deal, yeah? And they're the kind of people that I surround myself with. And you know, if you want to know what my circle is like, it's filled with community people. Yeah, I'm here for the community.
If I could just add to that, yeah. If I just add to that too, I mean, it's very important that, you know, you have so many transplants that come through communities who do run for office, who have not been here their entire life or a good chunk of their life. I think it's important to know that, you know, when you have someone like Melissa, you need to know that you have someone in office who's had their boots on the ground in the community, who has been an active member of the community, who lives in the community to represent the community. And you know, we don't get a lot of those. You start to see more of an influx of people who are coming in from outside. And I think it's important that when you speak to your neighbors, when you are helping to be her ambassadors out there, try and make that clear too, that she is a person of the people, for the people, right here in Sunnyside. So just want to add that in because I think that's an important talking point for a lot of people as well nowadays, because they don't really think about that. They just think, oh, okay, well, yeah, like Pat said, that's a nice person, this is a nice person, they seem honest, whatever, but they also need to know who is going to represent them. That's going to be somebody who knows the community, who knows what we need, who aren't just going to give us talking points and be talking heads for the community, which we've unfortunately seen way too much of in many campaigns. So if I could ask you please to put that forth when you're campaigning for her and being her ambassadors. You're all now officially ambassadors.
Melissa Orlando New York ngadi ki assembly member Saku Sumju Sobdin District 37 ki assembly langi yore Yesho di lurichis lago ni jumzen so di ngaram pheba yimbe chane mora chungdu kabla tholopla phedyen kola nyamship che phedyen phe gyana gi chashi mayim pata tinde kola nyamship ki engineer thesis legro thesis chi doa and they must say lo chipshik kap ne tamora tindish kap ne mora nangbe chela thunale che and phebe nangbal pha gyur che nangla cheshim da changma yuni and dual nangche shu and morangi ta rinthang legro sangje da rinthang de changma and phebe nangbe ki mijik ki nashinki and rinthang de yuni chi ta semba sangbo yarab che sang nyamchunji ani thangbo kechishi di chapsi nanglol thangbo di kechimborwa ami chiwala samdang thumni di kechimborwa dinde jik cheche ani morangi ta thida da langa gi nga injin platform like ta thenda khashi chodi thanda New York la khangbe gong dik shu phargi yore ani affordable housing di morangi ta 내가 제시직체 아니 가지 지조 남핑사다 유슝기 간예테체 유슝기 야고 메자 아니 탄다 immigrants 망부 주에다 아니 직 디보트체 다 디테인체 아니 미텐라 마지니 페냐지 셰스토아 디기 타 딘데 톨라 모랑기 슈케비아 라 아니 탄다 ngadi wala ta new immigrants new Americans la ni legung ji di legung di chat subro ta shuk chero ta ya ra ani ngazu ta yume chimi shibiyo sawa imbe kabla new immigrants imbe kabla chike khalore ngazu la ngui la ne shira tyen yo mare ani marsa je me di ni chong go chu ye din zo la kha ku ye di an chong ji go chu sa di chong di chat subu sha go re ani small business morange gyabyo chigi yore ani thanda Korea sungyopte dinzo shidi morangita tida yune mene shide New York ngade nanglo judi yarke tangya dirwa an keche she de ta ngade ki kusap gyada ngapchu lotarish tamgi yorwa ine din nanglo la ta phedeng kolla go chunye gyunga yunye ani phebe chedo ani khande ne ya langi resla ne ta chik phebe ki thola thapje kol gyapyo chigire labedi ye tengpop chembu ji yorwa मोरा फेदि रंग लाङि माता न्यापसिप छिग्यो चेता अन फेबे नांगबा चिन्दु अन ngara रेवा छिम्बु चिगि येदे चेनेङि दे मोरांगि कैम्पेन ला थन्दा बदोता चिन्दा सुम्बा ने कोचु छे अनि थुजि खत्तु तंबा चुंबा ने मोरांग कैम्पेन ला क्याप्यु छे लेगा छेनि दे दे अनि ngara ज नम्बर छांगमो लो अनि क्याप्यु नांगलो नां कैम्पेन गा क्याप्यु छिदि छापसि लादि तचिक दोस्ताना खासि छापसि छौरे लगरे दे छापसि नांगला थोना माटे वायना अन पेना छाशाना ता ट्रम्प तो ngazogi sinji khyobe kabla ta mimang la tubu khazu chungudo mi changma jinsung che pha deport che ra ta chapsil thona te de pe khechim bode thingido an de gyune ani ngaran zo shengi ne ta chiklopta la credit koya ani internship ki thuje ko ra dinde ta ani maong ba su gi dulam suya dinde ne thanda ne thangnan thye nyam shim nang na ani ngaran zo shengi le phingi resin shwe de chin pheba changma lo gyapyo nang lo na ngaran zo phedeng korla ani ngade ila Albany level la ngaje ke keja shingi ko tuna ninga Melissa Orlando la ni tengbob chembo je da rewa chembo sigi la tuchinang samalo
Patricia, do you have a question?
Well, no, I have a speech, sort of.
Yes, please.
I just want to tell everybody here, this is a real person who's still running despite all the clues that nothing has anything to do with money and power. We can still prevail. We can win the right thing to do for all of us. I really hope, I pray that Melissa gets in. And I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with the other two candidates. They seem like nice people. But they're not, somebody tells them what to do, and then they do it. They don't look around and go, what do we need? Let me hear my people. Melissa does, and then she does what's right. She's brave, she's not afraid of making enemies. She's a great deal like Kathy Nolan, but more progressive, and a good person to the bone. So when you talk to people, I want you to say, this is a good person to the bone. It's like a last of the breed. When we run out of her, we're out of people. Except for, of course, Eve over here, who's just made judge. She's judge in civil court. Woo! Woo!
My name is Melissa Orlando, and I am both your friend and your neighbor, and with your help, I will be the next assembly person for District 37. So I am running to represent you in Albany, and my hope is that as you get to know me, what I care about, and the work that I've done, that you will see yourself in this campaign. So if you've only met me recently, you know a little bit about my community work, but I want to tell you a little bit more about who I am. So I've lived here in Sunnyside for 26 years. I've raised my son here. He's gone to public schools here. He's in a public university now. I'm a single parent. I've worked 2 jobs my entire life. So I understand what struggle is. I understand the need to make hard choices about how to put food on the table and what things are priorities. I come from a blue-collar family, and I I saw my parents make hard choices all my life as well. That taught me to work very hard, and I will work equally as hard for all of you in Albany. Lots of people have asked me why I decided to run, who would do this crazy thing, so much work. And as I thought about it, you know, there was a window of opportunity because there's never an open seat. The assembly role is not a term limited role, so people come in and they stay, and if they're doing a good job, that's great. But the real reason that I'm running is because of teachers that I had in my life. The first thing I remember about politics was actually in kindergarten. We had a mock election, and I'm going to show you my age, but I voted for Jimmy Carter. And it introduced me to civics, not the person Richard would have voted for, but it introduced me to civics, and instantly I knew that it was something that I wanted to be involved in. And teachers throughout my life had similar impacts on me. In junior high school, I had a teacher, we were learning about world history, and we talked about Vietnam. And he told us truths that were not in our textbook, hard truths about war. He taught us about the Peace Corps and what it meant to stand up for your own personal beliefs. And it made me really recognize that the personal is political, right? And when I grew up, it was a time when women needed permission to have credit cards on their own, when we couldn't have a mortgage without a husband. And you know, if you're younger in a different generation, that's hard to even contemplate, right? But that's what it was like when I was growing up, right? So I knew that I needed to stand up for myself, and as I did more of that, I knew I needed to also stand up for community. One last thing about educators, and I will move on, but the other person that I want to mention is Dr. Peter Schwab. He was my mentor at SUNY Purchase. He passed away last month. But he really shaped how I view politics, how I look at issues from all different perspectives. He was my advisor on my senior thesis, which, if many of you don't know, was on the political history between China and Tibet. And he influenced my life in so many ways. I think about him nearly every day. Yeah. So educators play a special role in molding, you know, future constituents, future participants in communities. So I want to acknowledge them, acknowledge that, and just share that with you. That education is so important to me. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my platform. I have a lot of different things that are important to me. They fall into maybe 3 buckets: affordability, accessibility, and equity. And if you've looked at any of my cards, you can see that. Affordability in this city is so important because even before the insane amounts of inflation took over, this city was already expensive. It's one of the most expensive places in the world. So we need to strengthen rent stabilization rights. We need to do that as well for our small businesses, right? Because if you're a small business owner, your landlord can say to you from one lease renewal to the next, okay, your lease was $2,000, now it's $20,000. And there's no recourse for you as a business owner. So we have to strengthen protections around not just residential tenants, but also around small businesses so that you can stay where you are, so you can build a life in your community. Part of the affordability issue is not just a shortage of housing, it's a shortage of rent-stabilized apartments. And that is because there is no accountability for landlords who decide that they want to have rent-stabilized apartments, benefit, take the tax benefits from it, and then when they don't want to renovate after a tenant leaves, they keep those apartments offline. Lots of these landlords are giant corporations. we have to make them accountable for what they agreed to do. And my promise is that I will stand up for tenants in Albany, bring those rent stabilized apartments online. Now, I do understand that some landlords are small businesses, right? Maybe you own a small building, you rent one apartment. We have to also help those landlords be able to make the necessary repairs and bring their apartments online as well, so they can reap the benefits. And I will certainly look into ways that the state can help landlords, small landlords, get where they need to be, so that we all benefit from the rent stabilization promise. The next thing I want to talk about is equity, and that goes across a lot of different areas. One of my campaign platforms is around the environment, and I think we think about the environment just as pollution, but the environment is also about equity. There are certain specifications for different things that we're supposed to have as residents in a community. One example is trees. There are supposed to be a certain number of trees per capita in each community. And as you walk through the district, you can walk through industrial areas of our district, and in the summertime it is 1,000,000 degrees, and that's because of something called the heat island effect. The heat radiates off the concrete, and it makes it much more hot than it needs to be, and that's because there's a lack of trees. One of the things I'm thinking about in terms of legislation is that whenever there is a state project for in the DOT area, that you would require trees to be planted. So if there's something along a roadway, there's a sidewalk, the state needs to plant trees there. And that would help not only the heat island effect, bring the temperatures down, but it's so good for the climate, it will affect, climate change. We don't think about that, but that's really, if you live in an industrial area, if you live, say, in Blissville, right, there are 500 families in Blissville and another 500 folks who are sheltering there are no trees, that really affects them, right? So it's also a matter of equity and environmental concerns. And then the next thing that I want to also talk about is accessibility. And accessibility we can think about in terms of not just complying with the ADA. So we see the MTA is putting elevators in certain stations because most of the stations are not ADA compliant. That's one part of it. And we have to hold the MTA accountable to making those changes, right? You can see at 52nd Street, the work there for the elevator was supposed to be done 2 months ago. There's no work happening, there's no timeline, and I've done lots of work with the MTA in the past. I will hold them accountable to what they need to do in order to make our subway stations accessible. Accessibility is also about education. So we need to make sure that education funding is equitable in areas with lower incomes so that students can all access a quality education. Every student, including students with special needs, including students that do not speak English as their first language. The other part of equity that I want to talk about is having folks feel safe in their community, right? If you're here, you're a New Yorker, you may be an immigrant, you may be a new immigrant, or you may be someone whose family came here 100 years ago like mine. But everyone deserves to have the same rights. Everyone needs to be able to access the same services, the same quality of services, and everyone needs to be able to just live their lives. Right? So whether that means being safe from ICE, whether that means having your constitutional rights protected, if you are a member of the LGBT community, if you are a member of any other community, we all deserve equal treatment and to have a good life in our community. And I promise you that as your assembly member, I will work every day to make that a reality. So I don't want to just sit up here and talk and talk and talk. If you all have questions about me, I would love to have a dialogue. If you have any comments, if you think there are issues that I'm not thinking about that are really important for District 37, I'd like to know. Whether you're comfortable asking now, or if you would like to contact me later, send me an email, jump on the phone. I'm here to have conversations with each and every one of you. I thank you so much for being here. I thank all of the volunteers that have made this a reality. I thank everyone who's donated, and I look forward to being your next assembly member.
Sí se puede.